So today is an interesting topic. We are going to be talking about a topic called Acres of Diamonds. And Acres of Diamonds came from an old parable, an old story that many years ago was written about a farmer. And that farmer basically was very ambitious and he was looking for diamonds and he figured that he could go and find them. So he sold his farm. He spent the rest of his life chasing around looking for diamond mines. And the people he sold his farm to were down at the creek one day and they saw this glistening in the creek and they dug it up and they found diamonds in the creek on the farm. Now, the reason that metaphor is so valuable is I think so many people are looking for the grass that's greener on the other side. Has anyone ever been guilty of chasing the rainbow? Yep. And we always say, there's got to be an easier way. There's got to be an easier way. The truth of the matter is when you run a business, sometimes the most valuable thing you can be doing is right in front of you. And we do everything we can to avoid it. So today we're going to be talking about some great ideas in this space, which is, are you sitting on a diamond mine? When we talk about sitting on a diamond mine and you just can't see it, today is going to be about uncovering whether those opportunities are actually valuable to you or not. For those who I haven't met before, my name's David Guest. I run Outcomes Business Group. I've been doing that since 2001, which makes our company about 23 years old this year. Basically, we've been helping people grow businesses since I started. And one of the reasons I started doing this is when I was a young kid, I used to work for my parents in their business. And they said, we're running this business so you can become a professional. You can become anything you like, a doctor or a lawyer. And in those days, that was the options. But the whole idea was I got confused because they ran a business so that I could become a professional and get a job because they figured a professional was more secure. But what I didn't understand is why some people were making so much money in business while other people were just making ends meet. And it led me on a path of discovery. What I realized is there is a distinction between those who make money in business and those that don't. And we're going to go through some of that today as well. In my time, I've talked to lots of people in business, and sometimes it's not a business, it's a busyness. You're flat out busy all the time. And the reason that happens is we've got this big circle called operations. And sometimes we have a little bit of admin. It's usually done after hours. And that's the thing that we have to do to get the paperwork and the compliance done. And for many people in business I talk to, sales and marketing is almost non-existent. And they say, we don't need to sell. We don't need to market. We get most of our work through word of mouth or referral, which is great, right? Because that just means you're doing a good job. But when I really look at why they don't market, this is the real reason, right? They're that little white box in the middle. And when they run their business, they don't want to grow because they don't have any time left. And if we talk about doubling that business, they freak out because they go, I'm already doing 70 hours a week, can't possibly do 140. So I'm not interested in doubling my business. I just need one or two more clients, right? So the issue I have with this is not really a business. This is self-employment. And it's fine if that's what you want, right? But if you're looking to build a business, you need to be thinking slightly differently. And the person who's building a proper commercial business literally looks at operations, admin, sales, and marketing as something that needs to be in equilibrium, right? Because you should be marketing to fill your capacity. And you should be doing admin to make sure that you do your compliance and you get everything, all the ducks in a row, right? And operations should be a piece of the puzzle. But here's the key distinction, right? The business owner themselves needs to consider whether they actually want to step out of the business. Now, I call it exit, but I don't mean retirement. What I mean is get out of the day-to-day operation and get out of the way. So when we talk about building businesses, one of my biggest bugbears is that people call self-employment a business, which is sort of true because you have an ABN, but the truth of the matter is it's not scalable. If you're self-employed, you get paid for your time, which means you have limiting factors. Today, we're going to be talking a bit about how you can work smarter, not harder, and how we do that. And this is just a little quote that I picked up from a guy by the name of Ryan Dice. And I might get you to read that twice. He basically said, the more valuable you are to your business, the less valuable your business is. Now, that's a slap in the face for a lot of people. The more valuable you are to your business, the less valuable your business is. Because what it normally tells us is that you are self-employed. Okay, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being self-employed. Don't get me wrong. But I just need people to have a reality check. Because when we talk about struggles in business and I'm busy and I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed and I'm burnt out, 99.9% of the time, it's because you're running on the treadmill too hard. So when we start to realize the distinction between working in and versus working on the business, you can build a roadmap and you can start digging yourself out of that conundrum. So today we're going to be talking a bit about how you do that, how you leverage, and how you can find some untapped potential within the business that you're running right now. Today's presentation is going to be super interesting. So we're going to be talking about three elements. Now, If I talk about three elements in the business that we're going to cover today, the very first one that we need to talk about is cash flow. Now, the reason cash flow is so important is some of you have heard that saying, cash is king in business. Now, if you don't have money, you cannot scale your business. If you don't have money, you can't employ people. If you don't have money, then you're literally just, stealing from Peter to pay Paul. And for a lot of people in business, that becomes their day-to-day operation. How do we afford it? Oh my God, BAS has come up again. How do we pay this? And really, the issue is that we didn't put cash flow as a priority. Now, if you're a small business between $0 and $1 million, I will suggest that cash is king. You do everything you possibly can to make sure the cash is moving, right? You don't need to keep it. You just need to get it in so that you've got it coming in replenishable amounts. The second thing we're going to talk about today is systems. Now, the reason systems are so important is if I'm going to scale my business, if I'm going to employ people to do the work that I don't want to do anymore, if I'm going to contract, if I'm going to employ service providers, marketing agencies, talent agencies, whatever it might be, I must have systems in place to control the quality of work. Okay. And then the very last thing we're going to talk about is this whole idea of plan. Now, when I say plan, I don't mean let's write a business plan, because I will suggest to you, anyone who writes business plans, by the time the ink dries, it's out of date. Things change too quickly, right? And so plan is a verb, not a noun, right? To plan is something that every business owner must be doing on a regular basis. And if we're not planning on a regular basis, we're going to miss opportunities. We're going to be not working on the highest priority activities, and we're going to get stuck in the world of busyness. So we've got three presenters today. And the first one will be David Streibosch. He's going to be talking about money for Jam. Now, this is super important if you do not have the cash that you need to run your business right now. Because what David's done is he's uncovered ways of accessing funds that pretty much almost every business owner can use. And it was almost by accident that he did this, right? And so he's going to explain his journey, how he got to this point. Because when I heard the story, I thought this is super interesting and I've never heard this before. And so to find someone that's actually done all the due diligence on a great idea is brilliant. So without further ado, I think we might actually introduce David. Hey, how you going?
Morning, everybody.
I've known David for a while, and what I found about David, he's very diligent in doing his research and analysis, and he's in that world of startup. And so for us, sometimes as small business owners, we go, well, are we a startup or are we just a self-employed person looking to turn into business? The reality of what David's going to be talking about is how do we generate cash? So I'm going to hand over to you, David, and I'm going to let you do your presentation, and let's see if we can show people how to get some money for Jam. So over to you.
Great. Thank you, David. Let's get straight into it. Who am I and what can I do for you? So as David mentioned, my name's David Streibosch. I'm about to tell you how you can get money back in your account while helping others that are less fortunate. So my presentation is going to show you how you can connect, learn and give, and then receive back, how you can fix your cash flow and release some of the pressure that from ever increasing costs. Now, over the years, I've been working with complex strategies and investments. I was one of the largest margin lending writers for a product through CommSec CBA, structuring it in such a way as to show families how they could pay off their mortgage in up to half the time while investing with virtually no impact on lifestyle. I was one of the only firms to never have had a margin call in our firm's history, and I received then recognition and awards for my work in financial services and my contribution to different projects, both locally and overseas, including, but not limited to, co-founding an intellectual property firm that is providing the lowest cost application, drafting and renewal service for trademarks and patents globally. But even with that experience today, I'm going to share something to you that blew me away. I'm going to share how you can receive up to $100,000 and in doing so, not only help not-for-profits and charities, but also primary schools around the country. I don't know about you, but with the cost of school fees, aging parents, mortgages, wages, et cetera, getting anything from $40,000 to $100,000 would be really handy right now. Put your hands up if you agree. Also, if you stick around to the end, I'll also show you how you can save even more money. First of all, before I explain how this all works, I think it's important for you to understand how I came to be doing this to give you a context as to why I'm doing what I do. Well, I was one of 4 boys whose parents unfortunately got divorced when I was very young. We lived with our mum and moved more times than we had birthdays. We were so poor that we had to go to school to get school shoes from the school chaplain to go to school here in Victoria. As a teenager, I would often see my mum get what groceries she needed to then have to return those items at the checkout to just afford what she could. By 13, I was working. By 18, I was helping her pay off her mortgage so she wouldn't lose her house. That put in me a real fire to find ways to help people to not have to go through the same things that I did. So I became a CFP and built a successful practice. And recently I was reflecting on the learning I had had over many years. I specifically remember being taught to specialize or big, so I specialized. I was taught to leverage, and so I leveraged people. But as David said earlier, which coincidentally was not planned, I then found out that all I really had was a glorified job. I was always needed and I could rarely take holidays. I kept thinking to myself, if I could build something that could help a lot of people and could work around the clock, then I knew I was onto something worthwhile. And that's why I'm here, because I've built it. So what did I build, you might ask? A couple of things. Give and Receive is the first of its kind social governance platform that we're bringing to market this year, where a business can nominate any not-for-profit or charity, whether it has DGR status or not, and still claim a tax deduction. It's the first platform where an individual will be able to nominate any not-for-profit or charity, but at any time in the future, ask back for what they've given. It's being nicknamed Rotary on steroids. If you could choose to be anonymous, then we'll be promoting if you choose not to be anonymous, then we'll be promoting the good that you will be doing to the community and to your people. It will also be the first of its kind platform where it will list all the registered not-for-profits and charities starting in Australia and in the US, where it will use AI and build the profiles and highlight the latest programs or projects being run for not-for-profits and charities. At the moment, there is no one place you can go to get this up-to-date information. So it'll also become an education resource for schools. It's also going to be a community-led venture. So everybody who uses Give and Receive will get points. And for those who basically use the program in time, they will also have ownership within the business as well. So everybody benefits from taking the journey with us. What goes hand in hand with Give and Receive is our default charity, Handshake Aid. Its goal is to help the children, help the classroom, help the community. So we're going to be going into primary schools and teaching children about the history of not-for-profit and charities. They will actually be given credit, so they'll use the Give and Receive platform where they'll be able to choose their own charity to basically give to. So we want to have children looking outward rather than inward, understand the need for volunteering, etc. And we're also going to work with the schools to understand the child. If we can understand the child through illness, poverty, safety, abuse, then we can help that child potentially become the best that they can be, and in turn help the classroom to become a more nurturing and safer environment, and therefore help the community as a whole. So our goal, our big goal, and what led me on this journey into what I'm going to show you, is that we want to make Give and Receive and Handshake Aid basically the largest alternative source of funding for primary school education in this country. So we built what we believe will be the go-to platform for giving and a charity that will make a difference for a lot of children. But you really never know that you have something of value and people decide they want to partner with you, that people are willing to put skin in the game. I personally don't like the idea of investing up to $1 million into a startup with no track record. And so it didn't sit right with me to go and ask people like yourselves to do the same for me. So then I gave a lot of thought and I was looking at how could I do this? How could I raise money to bring this to market? Well, I found an amazing way, and it's called ESIC. ESIC. So what is ESIC? Well, ESIC is commonly known as the Early Stage Innovation Company, or ESIC Tax Offset is what it's commonly called. It's actually a program that the federal government released in 2016, and it's administered by the ATO. So many people have not heard about this program, or if they have, they're not aware of how it can be applied. And so what this program allows you to do is to receive back up to $200,000 maximum, a non-refundable carried forward tax offset. So it's a maximum of 20% of what you invest. Because it's capped at 200,000, then the most that most people wouldn't put into, say, an ESIC startup would be $1 million. You also, over a 10-year period, you don't have to pay any tax, any capital tax on any capital gains should you ever sell the shares. The question then is, who in their right mind, though, is going to put up to $1 million into a startup knowing that they're extremely high risk? The other one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that they've got a couple of tests that you need to meet. So if you don't meet what they call the sophisticated investor test, then the maximum you can only invest is $50,000. And what was interesting is when I went on this journey, I discovered that a lot of people were not interested or felt they couldn't participate because they thought they needed an accountant certificate. And this is what was just mind-blowing to a lot of people and a lot of accounting firms, is that the assumption is that in order to qualify as a sophisticated investor or to meet the sophisticated investor test, you need an accountant certificate, which you may have heard of, that requires you to either earn $250,000 for the last 2 financial years or have $2.5 million net value. Now, there's been a lot of discussion in the media around how people are inheriting homes and all their house value is now over 2.5. And so technically, they're able to walk into an accounting firm and say, I'd like to have an accounting certificate, regardless of their financial acumen. So then we went on a journey, and I met a couple of gentlemen that are working in this space for the last 6 years. And I said, well, let's just basically work within this sophisticated investor space. And initially, basically the answer was, well, David, that's difficult because we do need that account certificate. And I said, well, look, from my experience over 20 years within financial services, that's not the case. That's one of 4 ways. One of the other ways is that we can invest at least up to $500,000. But again, people assume that in order to do that, you still needed to then invest using an account certificate, or you needed to do it through a financial services licensee. Well, what we discovered, well, that was not actually the case. So much so that we introduced and built what is called Atavari. So this is our site that talks to and talks about the ESIC program. And Atavari stands for to start or to activate. So there's me as one of the co-founders with Peter and Eric, Peter being a barrister and Eric an actuary, who have been working with this program for over 6 years. And so we went and we spoke to legal. We basically then applied to the ATO. And what I'm now going to show you is a few different case studies and show you that what you're actually able to do with this program does in fact work. So we had a situation where we had an individual who you can clearly see here, this notice of assessment that was just handed to us, redacted and handed to us just in October. This person was only earning $107,000. They had a bit of a capital gains tax issue. They were also basically paying off a debt with the ATO. And so they heard about the ESIC program, and we spoke to them, sat down with them, explained how it worked. And as you can see here, we introduced them into the early stage investor tax offset. They were able to receive back, because this below shows the PAYG that was coming out from their employer. They were able to have all of the tax returned to them. And as you can see down here, they have now $75,000 carried forward, which means they will not be paying tax for the next 2 to 3 years. So as an example, in terms of just how the numbers works and give you a bit more of an idea of how this works. If I go back to, for example, say someone earning $110,000, the minimum loan you can do to qualify in the sophisticated investor test is $500,000. And so what I'm doing is I'm just showing you both the workings and the cash flow of how this works. What's interesting is that the ESIC program allows you to do this both as a company or as an individual, or both in the same financial year. So you can choose how you want to utilize this program for your benefit, whether it be in your business or you personally or within your family. And so the way it works is that we, through Atavari and our licensed lender, basically we've got a licensed lender, they will lend you a business loan, a private loan. And what happens is you pay a 1% deposit, and that 1% deposit we will then provide a loan that will go into the startup. Now that loan, in order for any startups to partner with Atavari, they sign a contractual agreement where a management company oversees the bank account. Effectively, you may have heard of escrow accounts or custodial accounts like solicitors have or real estate agents have. So basically what that means is that the startup is unable to touch those funds. And so what happens is the money that is lent goes into the startup's bank account to buy the shares. You as the investor are issued shares and we manage the registry. So we have to show the ATO that you've been registered on the ASIC registry as part of that startup and that the funds have gone into the account. You then have a interest-only loan for 3 years. And so what then happens, and this is the cash flow over that period of time, and this is the benefit to the individual, again, over that period. And so what happens is you've paid in this financial year, so before the end of this financial year, because the cutoff is you must do it and sign up and have paid and have your shares issued before the 30th of June. So this person would have done this on 110, their tax would be $26,000. I've even worked out what the tax will be based on the tax cuts that are coming into play over the next few years. And so what would happen in the first year is they would then receive back or refunded their tax through the tax offset, the tax they've paid. Next year, they've got to pay the interest on their loan. And so if they didn't do a tax variation, and this is what's really interesting, is that we've actually got someone going through the process right now of doing a tax variation. And the ATO asks a lot of questions around that. What are you doing? How did you do it? Where's the evidence? And so we've given that all to the client. And they're in the process of getting their tax variation, which means that they don't have to then wait till the end of the next financial year to receive their returns. Or if you're a business, you don't have to keep paying your installments, both either on your profits from your own personal income or from your business profits. You can actually receive that money throughout the year to use for your benefit for whatever that might be, help you pay the mortgage, have cash flow in your business, etc. And so then this just shows the cash flow over the next, so straight away they're already in front. They're basically able to use those funds to then, with the next year's tax refunds, they're still going to be in front overall for the next few years. And then they get again a big lump sum coming through in that 5th year. And then so the benefit to them is $42,500. But what if you were earning, say, for example, $150,000? Well, if you chose to only do the $500,000 loan, you can still see that the benefit slightly increases and you've actually received all of the benefit back from utilizing the tax offset, which again is 20% of what's invested within the first 3 years. But then we might suggest, well, maybe you look at $750,000 and that then increases the benefit to you. And again, you can see the impact on the cash flow. Now, a lot of accountants like to, and I'm sure a lot of people here, their accountants recommend don't go over the $180,000 mark because then you go into the highest marginal rate. What we'll do is we'll then move income into whether that be other companies or other members of your family, etc., to minimize tax. Now, next year, that rate is going to go up to 190,000 as a maximum before we go into the highest marginal rate. Now, if you were earning and or drawing those sorts of monies, then you would be crazy not to then do the $1 million and take advantage of the full tax offset that's available, and therefore receive nearly back up to $100,000. If your earnings are higher, you can start to see how then the benefit would increase. Now, what's amazing about this is that we've worked out that roughly what you get is what the startup also receives over that time frame of paying off the loan. So what happens is the money that is invested into the startup is put into, as I mentioned, an escrow account, but it's put on deposit. And that's how the startup then benefits. Now, what happens is for the first 3 years, the startup is receiving a benefit. In the 4th year, and this is where it gets really interesting because you've got this interest-only loan, you get to the 4th year, you've already made, if this was your situation, over $100,000. The startup will then turn to you as an investor and say, would you like to continue? And you're thinking, hey, I've already made $100,000. in my pocket, I'm happy to invest up to $100,000, or maybe I will go up to 500 or $1 million. And so then what happens is you then refinance your loan, and that startup then is able to have access to whatever you decide to at that point in time to release in that 4th year. And so the startup then can, in that 4th year, significantly increase what would be their cash flow to then go and take the business further. So this whole premise about what we're doing is not only to give to you, but also show the startups themselves how this is an opportunity to assess and evaluate the relationship together. And it's the first time I've ever come across a true win-win. So let me just now go back to stop sharing. So just bear with me a moment as I just work my way back through that. Okay, so stop screen sharing, coming back to myself. Okay, so everybody can see me. Great. So what I wanted to do is just talk again about a couple of situations where, just to give you a bit more, again, a couple of stories that happened recently, where one of them was we had a client that spoke to their accountant and said, look, I want to do this program. The accountant straight away said, look, you don't qualify because you can't get the accountant certificate. You're not earning, they were, earning around $120,000. I then said, that's okay. Let me I'll speak to the accountant. And so sent them the information that we had, the legislation, had a chat, and just respectfully said that, look, the accountant certificate is one of 4 ways. Here are the other 3 ways, and here is the way that this particular client or investor qualifies. And that accountant was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that that was even possible. And so then submitted their application. We also had another situation recently where a gentleman had a very serious tax problem in terms of, so as an example, you might sell a property and have a very big capital gain, or in this case, they were bringing in income from overseas as a very significant lump sum, and that would all have to be included in their financial return for that year. They heard about, yes.
Can I just ask you a quick question? If anyone's got any questions around this, because there's a lot of numbers going on the screen and there's a lot of questions in people's minds, if you want to get those questions into the chat box as we go, because you're showing us that there's money available to us. You're showing us that we can get that money through this process, and we can also support a charity. But my first question is, would this work for me, and what are the risks?
Yep. And I'm going to open up for questions in a moment.
Yep.
So I'll just finish this story, and then I'll just highlight a couple of other things, and then I'll open up for questions. So the other one was recently they had a fairly significant capital gain. They spoke to their accountant, and again, because they're a startup, weren't earning a huge amount of money, their taxable income was fairly low, but they were going to have a fairly significant taxable income in terms of either the money they were bringing or the capital gain. So again, they heard about what we were doing. They spoke to their accountant. The accountant said, look, you don't qualify because you don't have the accountant certificate. I then spoke to, now this was a firm with 2 directors and a number of accountants, very conservative. I spoke to the director, sent them the information. They sat down with their whole firm, all their accountants, came back to me and said unanimously, we have agreed that what you've supplied is in fact correct. We weren't aware that this was an alternative way. And in doing so, the partner who had spoken to the client, and this is what blew me away, actually wrote and called that client and apologized for making an error. So that just, again, I'm just trying to highlight that this is something that a lot of people have not heard about, a lot of accountants aren't aware of. But the great thing is that once we provide you the information, that again, we provide you what you need to put into your tax returns to support your claim, well, your accountants must submit that as part of doing your tax return. So just moving forward, one of the things that we're doing is, and I forgot to mention this earlier, I did mention this earlier, is that if you stuck around, I was going to share something with you, and that is that for anybody who signs up or registers With us, before the end of March, we're going to give them 50% off that initial deposit that we normally charge. So the easiest way to think about it is if your loan value is $500,000, 5,000. If it's 1 million, it's 10,000. We're going to give you 50% off if you do that before the end of this month. If you do it before the end of April, it's going to be 20% off. So let me just close by saying that, imagine you yourselves receiving up to $100,000 and knowing also that you're going to also bring to market what we believe will be the go-to platform for not-for-profits and charities around the world and help primary school kids. Why wouldn't you do it? So thank you. I'm now open for questions. If anybody's got anything they would like to ask me.
Yep. There's a few questions in the chat. So I'll start with the first one. Amrita's asked, is this a lending platform?
No, this is not a lending platform. It's really a service-based business where we bring together a number of different parties, but we do have, as part of the strategy, we do have part of our business is a lender, a private lending arrangement where we can then supply that loan to you in order to participate. But you don't have to use our facility. If you wanted to, you could use your own. You could just put all your own money in if you wanted to still take advantage of the tax offset. So it's not something you have to do specifically through us. If you had $1 million, you could right now go and invest into an ESIC startup and still get that $200,000 tax offset. But as we know, a lot of investors, when they go to invest, they don't want to just use all their cash. Most people will go and borrow the money and basically then use that to invest into. So you can use your own loan, or alternatively, we can provide that to you through a private business arrangement.
Yep, fantastic. The second one here is, sorry.
Sorry, David, could I just add on to it? So really still there is that money needs to come. So you kind of facilitating that flow of money?
So the money sits in, and so you're talking about from the investor point of view, or what's happening with the startup?
From the investor point of view. So if I don't have that cash, then I do have to take that loan out, don't I?
Yeah. So the maximum you have to do is just that 1% deposit of the loan value. So if you want to do the 500,000, you just do the 5,000. Then we will provide the loan, which that $500,000 will go into the startup, and we have to show the ATO the money went into the account.
Yeah.
The shares were purchased and issued to you. And then we give you a certificate that also shows that the ESIC is an ESIC qualified company. And then all of that information is what you hand to your accountant. Now, your accountant must submit that as part of your return.
Yeah. Because it's not dependent on my borrowing capacity then, is it?
No, it's not based on...
I'm just applying to the program and...
Yeah, because it's a business loan, it falls outside of the normal, arrangements for public lending.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
Fantastic.
Thanks for that, David.
Thanks, Amrita. There's another question from Jeff, who is similar. He's asked that question is, what is the loan secured against? So I'm guessing you answered that by just...
So the loan secured against the shares that are purchased within that startup, and the funds sit in an escrow account, because this whole strategy is about protecting the investor.
Okay. And he also asked, what are the risks, e.g. tax ATO changes in the future?
Oh, look, we expect, because this program's been running since 2016. Now, a lot of people say that the government's not interested in supporting startups. They are, but they aren't, because they've got programs like this, but a lot of people just don't hear about it. So they're not out there promoting it. And so what we're doing is letting people know that this is here, this is available to you. And we expect that over it could maybe only run for another 2 years, could run for 5 years. But what will happen is they have a budget. They haven't been meeting what is the allocated budget that they've set aside for the tax offsets. But what will happen is, as we ramp this up, I'm sure that at some point they're going to go, you know what, we're hitting the level that we've allowed for, and then they'll potentially then close it down. It's also a federal run program that was set up in 2016. So different governments may come in play. And like they do, they like to look at everything and decide, do I like this program that was put in place by a previous predecessor?
Mm.
And they may then decide they want to change it as well. So the great thing though is that when you, on the day that you register and we issue the shares to you, so if you were to sign up in March and basically we put all of everything into place, the shares are issued in that financial year, because the program is in existence right now, you automatically you qualify for the tax offset. And the way that it works is it's a non-carried forward tax offset, just like a carried forward loss. It stays in your tax return forever until you use it up. So even if in the next financial year the ATO turned and said, you know what, we're not going to do this, and that's the risk. If you don't do this before the end of this financial year, you run the risk that this program may not be available next year. And that's just, to me, it's like, well, you take a risk of potentially giving away 40 to 100,000.
Yeah, gotcha. Another question here from, I think it's Mark. Does this affect my borrowing capacity when going for loans with the bank?
It will, but that's again because it's done through, firstly, because they're startups that I have, and because Atavari we're partnering together to make all of this work.
Mm-hmm.
If you then work, I've got someone I sat down with yesterday. They're looking at buying a property for, a new residential home in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And they're like, okay, well, how's this going to work if we've taken out $1 million loan? Well, what we would then do is say, at that time, we would ask you just to pay the interest that's remaining on the loan terms that you had, and then you can either choose to decide how much of the shares you still want to retain, and we will either then basically buy back your shares if you don't want to continue on. So this would be a case-by-case situation, and you'd have to show that you have a legitimate reason for why you would want to exit the program. But it's not like, you must stay in it and you have to do this. But if on a case-by-case, we would assess it with whatever information you provided to verify that you're, that for whatever reason, and then we would work with you to, if you wanted to exit. And again, because the funds are sitting in escrow, we're able to buy back your shares for what you paid, and you're off the register. There is no loan. See you later. But then you've also benefited from the program as well. So the first, as I said, it blew me out. It's the first win-win I've ever seen in over 20 years of working within financial services.
Cool. The next question here is, who provides or finds the startup?
So the reason that this is happening is it's because I have my ESIC startups. So as I mentioned earlier, in wanting to bring the likes, I've got IP Renewal, but I also got GNR Media, which is the media arm for Give and Receive and Handshake Aid.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the journey I went on. I discovered that the ESIC program, I was able to qualify as an ESIC company, a couple of them. And I just went, wow, this is an amazing way where I can have you guys help you, but in doing so, you're helping me bring to market what we believe will be the next go-to platform for giving around the country, but also disrupting the whole intellectual property space as well.
So if I get that right, what you're saying is ESIC's available to everybody.
ESIC's available to everyone. Now we will be taking on other startups, so we're happy to have conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
We may not be able to get people. Well, we're going to look to bring on other startups within Atavari. So you will be able to register as a founder.
Yeah.
But this is, again, we will be assessing those startups because within Atavari, we want high quality, because Peter and Eric have been working with this program for the last 6 years. Their success rate has been fairly high because they don't simply just take on anybody.
Yep.
We want to work with startups that have a very high likelihood of success, not just simply an idea that may not even exist, that you don't even know whether it's even going to work.
Yep. So the question then sort of leads on to what happens if the startup fails?
Well, okay, so and it does happen, 80% of startups fail. So the way it works is that if the startup, because again, they have a contractual arrangement with a management company over their bank account, if their cash flow that's coming through over the next few years, if they can see that they're not able to organically grow their revenues and generate cash flow, then that's going to be fairly obvious, and therefore they're going to see that they're not going to be able to sustain what they're doing. Well, the first thing they have to do is they have to buy back all the shares and effectively buy back their intellectual property. So all those funds that are on deposit will go back and buy those shares back from the investors. Or they'll talk to the investor and say, do you want to take the risk? And do you want to continue on and release the funds to me? So then that gives them another ramp up for another period of time. But if those shareholders are not comfortable, they can exit. And then that founder receives all of their intellectual property back. And then they have to decide whether they want to either continue or close the door.
So you're saying that if I decide I'm not happy with how the startup's going, I can pull a pin?
You can pull the pin. So you just, as long as you've met your interest only, so it's a 3-year interest only loan, you can pay all the interest up front if you want to. So again, I've got one person, one situation where with that massive capital gain, they're going, you know what, I'm going to pay all the interest in the first year.
Yep.
I don't want to do it over 3 years. In fact, because the tax rates are changing next year, right now is a really good time if you've got a fairly significant amount of income, take advantage of the fact that the tax rates are going to drop and get a massive tax deduction this year. You could sign up and say, I'll pay all of the interest all up front in this year.
Yeah, right. So there's a bit of flexibility, and I guess the whole idea of the escrow means that the startup doesn't take your money and run. They actually have to justify withdrawing from that account as well. Right?
You can't. It's impossible. Like I said, I've got a couple of ESICs. I've been doing this. I can't even access or get access to my own bank account for my ESIC company. I have to go through that custodial service and request reimbursements. And then once the funds are available, then I can use them to do whatever marketing or other things that are necessary to continue developing the business.
Yeah. So Greg's asked this question. I get that if I'm a high net worth individual, there's a tax offset advantage. I don't understand how as a startup and why anyone would want to invest big dollars into my business.
So you have to first qualify as an ESIC startup in the ATO, and this is what I love about it, is the ATO spells it out very clearly. If you just do this and do this and do this, then you can qualify either as an investor or a startup. So it's all there. If you go and read it, and that's why I wanted to show you the site, it's all there for you to find. Now, if you're an ESIC startup, the whole thing was the federal government wanted to find a way where give at least people a bit of a nudge to say, hey, look, we want you to support startups. Here's something we'll give to you as a benefit. But then we've gone and just said, well, let's do it in a way that gives people an opportunity to assess while managing the risk. And that's what we've done. And so you're able to go to a whole bunch of people and say, look, I reckon I've got the next big thing, the next unicorn. I want you to come and partner with me. Here's an opportunity to do that over a number of years. And then not only are you helping them and they're making money, but you're also yourself then the startups then receiving funds, and they've got then their runway or their cash flow for a number of years locked in to really see whether they can make that opportunity work.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that I could have a startup idea that I want to throw in the ring. I could just be a business owner that's looking for the tax benefit and potentially have a startup that I know of, or I can go with one of the startups that have been approved through this program as well.
Yes. So we will be adding more startups. Initially, they will be my ones, because that's why we've set all this up and been running this. But we will be now, because we've proven it's worked for 6 years. We know that this program is just fantastic. We're going to be then opening the door for other startups to come on board. And what will happen is we'll assess those startups to determine whether we feel that they're a valid startup to partner with us. Yes. And then we will work with those startups. And the thing to remember, if you're a startup, we need to take a small amount of shares that will be diluted as your investors come on board, because then we're acting as business owners, not advisors, which then would mean we'd have to be licensed differently.
So look, and there's a couple of questions that are very specific. I think David is offering a meeting for people who have specific questions.
If you use that QR code, it will take you to a landing page. And within that landing page, there's two things. There's a tab that you can download information, and secondly, there's also an ability to book a meeting. Now, if you want to get in before March and you find that there's no spaces available, give me a call. I'm then happy to do either some later of an evening ones or on the weekend up until the end of March if you're really keen. Otherwise, you can go to the Advari website and register as an investor.
Fantastic. Look, just to wrap all this up, because when I first heard this from David, my first thought is I don't understand enough about this to make any decisions whatsoever. When we started today's presentation, we talked about acres of diamonds, and we said, look, as a business owner, sometimes you have to be looking for the smart way to grow. Now, this may not be for everybody, right? But what I have heard from David is it's been proven, it's got a whole team behind it. It's legitimized through the ATO. So the ATO are encouraging this sort of behavior. What usually stops people doing this is they need to find a startup, they need to find the funding, they need to do the application process, there's too many moving parts. But the fact that you sort of did it all for yourself and you said, hang on a second, this works. Yep. There's literally money for Jam, because what you showed us, even on 110,000, I think was your first example, is that person's still going to get a positive cash flow result as an end game on this, regardless of what the startup's success is.
$40,000 in their pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
With virtually, and with us managing the risk for them. I mean, the great thing is you can get up to $100,000, and there are other things that I'm doing which I haven't shared here, but I can share with you that will, it's virtually impossible for me to not meet an individual or business owner where I can't show them how they can actually get further ahead financially. And that's why I shared that story about how I grew up, because that's a real passion of mine, is to just set people free. Yeah. And that's why this just blew me away when I found it and we've started using it, because it was like, it is the first time that I've ever found something that's a true win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons I got you here today. Is when I heard your story, I said, "Hang on, this sounds too good to be true." Then you showed me
and I joke, because I'm pretty sure, and I've said this to a number of people, because I've had that said to me all my life, and I'm going to pretty much, I think, call myself David Too Good to Be True Strybosh. So that's my nickname. I'm actually going to brand that. I think that's going to be me. I'm going to start putting that out there, because I get it every single meeting.
Yeah, and look, I think the fact that you've shown us the background, you've shown us the ATO website, you've done the numbers. Every person is going to be different, but it's something that I think anyone who's in business and generating 100K or more has access to, even probably less than that. But it's a question of what those numbers look like for them. Now, I know you're pretty excited because it's your charity and your give and receive is
going to be massive. We're already getting interest from other parties. We're already getting LOIs from other organisations that work with charities both here in Australia and overseas.
Yeah.
GNR Media, which will be the media arm and the ESIC program, to support that will by default grow significantly, because every business, there's two major costs: there's people and marketing. And as you spoke to earlier, it's amazing how, without even realising I'm touching on the things you said, we need to then have a marketing division. So why not then set up what will be a unique way of doing it, where we'll be then working and partnering with different providers, both locally and overseas, to provide that service to us. So it's very exciting. The next few years is going to be exceptionally exciting to just see how where it all goes. I'm really looking forward to it. But as I said, I just love the idea. I get a real buzz, as you can probably tell, and when you sit down with me, to know that you're seeing things that you never were aware of before, and it can actually help you and your family and your business. I get a real joy out of that. That's a real buzz for me. Yeah,
fantastic. So look, I think we've answered most of the questions here. The links are in the chat box for those who'd like to book a time, or even just go to the website and have a look at atavari.com.au. It's definitely worth investigating. And I think for those people who are paying tax and thinking, well, I don't know how to get out of it, this is a great way to do it, because it's a win-win, as you said. It's probably a win-win-win, right? Because government wants people to invest in these things. You're facilitating, and the charity benefits as well. So
I've seen a few messages coming through with a few people already booking. So thank you for that. And I look forward to sitting down with you all.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's give David a bit of a hand. Excellent job putting this forward. He started this presentation by saying, I've never done an online presentation before. You wouldn't know it, because
that was my first one ever.
The second element that I wanted to touch on today is this idea of business systems. Now, I've been a big advocate of having a CRM in a business for many, many years, probably since the day I started, even before that. And one of the things that made me realize is the criticality of keeping data and keeping track of relationships. And what has happened over the past 10 years is the number of channels that we need to use to communicate with people has exponentially grown. So we used to have a telephone, a television, and a newspaper. And now we have 500 other channels that people use. And I don't know about you, but one minute I'm on Zoom, the next minute I'm on Google Hangouts, and the next minute I'm typing a chat into Instagram. And so people have become almost platform agnostic. The problem for us as business owners is how do we manage all of that? And I think what Kel's going to be talking about today is super awesome. I'm a big advocate of anybody who puts systems into their business so they can scale. And when we talk about planning, which we'll talk about in the last part of today's presentation, we'll talk about how do you actually add all these elements. And as a business owner, how do you become a builder rather than a person just running on a treadmill? So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Kel Holliday, good friend of mine, also man of the world. And let's see what he can share with us today that's going to keep us charged and keep us focused on improving our productivity. So over to you, Kel.
Thank you very much, David. And it is a pleasure to be here, all the way from Thailand. And so it's a place that I love. And it really is, I guess, the culmination of putting your systems and everything in place that's allowed me to live a life over in Thailand of what I would call freedom. All of us have a different way of measuring that. And I guess I just wanted to share with you some stories today and also get into this whole idea of what the technology space is looking like right now and where it's going to be going as well. Plus, I'm going to actually go back a bit of history at the same time. So it's very important that we really think to ourselves, what's the past? So we actually know what the future is. So just thinking on that, and I'll give you a little bit of my own personal history to give you a bit of an understanding of where I'm coming from. And so when we start to think about CRMs and integrated systems, etc., there is a lot of stuff that we want to think about. But for me, it is all about creating time and freedom. And I've since the opening of the world after COVID, I've now been in 13 different countries over the last 2 years. I got myself married and now on my honeymoon down in the south of Thailand, and just basically enjoying life. That's a couple of photos of me up in the Northern Territory, catching barramundi and mud crabs, and just basically enjoying life. And the reason that is because there's three parts of what I've been able to achieve myself and help others do is that's to get your thinking right, to get your technology right, and get your team right. And I just call that the 3 T's of time, and it makes a big difference. Just a little bit of my own backstory. Going back into school age years, I was actually dyslexic. One of the reasons why I wear these glasses is to try and help that situation out. And having dyslexia, for those people who don't know what it's like to live with that, you have that feeling of being dumb. That was the basic feeling that I had all the way through my school years. I always wanted to become somebody that will help people. I want to be a doctor, and you see that in that little image there. But society told me I'd never be there. I would never make being a doctor because I couldn't read and write properly. And so I took off to become a carpenter. Done my apprenticeship, finished my apprenticeship in 1986. Finished that apprenticeship and really got knuckled down to be a builder. So a little Bob the Builder there. And what I loved about being a builder was a lot of people, we always want to live our dreams. And one of the dreams, the big Aussie dream for many of us is to own a home. And I love the idea of giving people that key to their home. But again, the dyslexia had a bit of a challenge. So I had to surround myself with the right people. But also I adopted technology very, very early in life. So what you got to think of, technology, IBM bought out the first computers within Australia in 1982. And in 1983, I was using computers pretty much full time. And by 1985, I was actually using Microsoft Project, which is when it actually launched in 1984. So being around computers, basically the whole life of my computing, my business career as well. 2008 had a bit of a change. I actually broke my back, and that really sent me on a bit of a reinvestigation of what life's all about. I went off and became a pastor for the next few years, helping people in their, wasn't necessarily a faith journey, but in that area of welfare, helping people to understand who they are, getting their value back. I actually started up an RTO, registered training organization, in 2012, and literally become the ones that's planted the idea of the NDIS, National Disability Insurance Scheme. So been a big part of that side of things as well. And then in 2018, I decided to retire. That lasted a total of 2 weeks. Couldn't sit down too long. But this whole time, technology. My life was always revolved, my business has always revolved around technology. And what that meant is, and so going back when I was 24 years of age as a builder, I adopted technology and built a $45 million building company. All right, because I was able to leverage the technology. While it was very raw and everything like that, it was quite an interesting space. When I was in the RTO, we won a number of awards and everything because of the way in which we adopted and built systems. In actual fact, I've become an advisor to the New South Wales Education and Educational Services to try and help them to build systems to educate other people and to also modify their compliance documents. So it was quite a interesting sort of journey. Wrote a number of books through that process. And so I've been around in this technology space in leadership, and was recognized back in 2016, 17 and 18 internationally in the top 10 people in my field. So that's purely and simply just to give you a bit of a background. They actually say very clearly that you've got to have about 10,000 hours to say that you master your craft. So, yeah, that works out about 5.5 years for most people. I've been in this sort of industry for now 40 years. So I'm not saying I'm a master, I'm still learning, but there's a lot of experience there that I've actually had personally, and the other people within my business, the other partners and team members, we've got literally tens of thousands of hours up each, over 200,000 hours of mastery in our field. So, but I promised you here, it's enough about me. I promised you here to actually give you an understanding about CRMs, systems, etc., like that. So I wanted to start with a bit of history. So historically, we've had a number of different types of CRMs. We started off very much in the early 90s with what we call the operational type. And that is a very simple way of sending emails backwards and forwards. And it was in that lead generation nurture sort of area. Then the era of data. So you may have heard of the different ways of the internet's evolved. We had the internet, 1, then 2, now there's coming up to 3. But this analytical type of data collection become very, very popular in the mid-90s. And it started to get to the stage where we started to want to keep our own data rather than leaving it on the table. And then there was another type of CRM rise, which was all about getting all of that together and also to be able to share information. As the rise we had of cloud technology, there was this rise of collaborative type. And David mentioned this at the start, with all the different tools there are on the table these days, nothing is more important than communication. Communication with your team, communication with those people you collaborate with, and also communication with your clients and your prospects. So this collaborative type of platform become very, very popular. Now, what also become very interesting in this process is that everybody said, as all the rise of other types of technology, people are going, you've got to get the best sort of tool in every category. And so now we start to get this era and this common mindset where people are getting all these different applications. And then I just call it, they were trying to glue them together with a bit of sticky tape. It was, you either had all these different pieces of technology and then you're copy and pasting, or you're trying to get things like Zapier or Pabbly and some of the different tools that are out there to try and bring all this technology together. And it was in some respects right. As I said, there's this era of you've got to get the guru, you've got to get the number one thing, you've got to get that one thing that's best, right? So we had this sort of best sort of technology and best sort of systems in our mind. But with that, and here we are again, we've got so many different technology tools around that now is becoming almost important for most businesses to use. If you want to get into productivity area, if you haven't got something to manage your calendar, you're really going to have a challenge. And one of the most popular ones around is Calendly. Some of you may or may not have heard that. And while we're going, I'll just say this. Drop into the chat as I'm maybe ticking over some of these. It's to say, yep, I've got Calendly. So just write the different applications, and it'll be quite interesting to keep an eye on the chat to see exactly how many different applications are out there being used. So keep on, just type them in there, what you're using, what you're not using, maybe what you're thinking about doing. Yep. So we've got one there. It's Calendly is awesome. Stripe. So these are the very popular ones. CRMs. Eventbrite is another version of a calendar sort of system that actually can book in people into events. ClickFunnels is very much around trying to do lead generation, where ActiveCampaign is a CRM that's about that nurture. It's more in that collaborative sort of style, but not quite got the whole thing there. So there's a lot of different types of applications that are commonly recommended by people. Now, remember what I'm saying, if you keep on adding more and more and more, you've got to start to stick them together somehow. Bit of sticky tape, all right? Zapier, Pabbly, whatever it might be. But there's this new era of thinking. There was, going back a while ago, back in the late 90s into the early 2000s, the all-in-one system was sort of like thought of. And really, it just become, in some respect, they become all-in-one systems. Great. But what it really was is in the back end of a lot of these applications, the sticky tape was sitting in the back end rather than you seeing it in the front end. In other words, the CRM companies started to buy up the different specialty types of applications and started to adapt that into their platform. And it wasn't until the late 1990s that we end up getting what's called Salesforce. It was the number one cloud-based CRM in the world. It still is right up there as far as the number of users. It's also very complex, but it is definitely it was the leader of the pack in the late 1990s that said, hey, we've got to start to bring our technology into one spot. And they was very successful in being able to adapt and bring all the different types of tools that businesses need to build their systems into one platform, one login, and away it goes. So always remember Salesforce as the leader in its game. It's also probably one of the most expensive, all right? And for many small businesses can be priced out of the market for you. So here's the problem. I'm just going to say it straight out. These are the problems that I see time and time again when I'm helping people with their technology, is that we have an absolute avalanche, particularly now. We've got the rise of all the AI stuff. And I just, in that point number 2 there, I just want to give you a balanced perspective. If you're looking for technology in your business, based upon your turnover, there's a good rule of thumb. It's about $400 a month for most businesses to have a technology stack that's about $400 a month, and then about 2% of your monthly income over 20,000. So up to 20,000, it's going to cost you about $400 a month. That's about minimum. That's US dollars. Most technology these days is based in US dollars. And so now we've got this explosion of AI. People are now grabbing at all these different tools. They see ChatGPT is nice and free, but it's not free. Free is not free. So free costs something, and most of the things that it costs you is your time. So just also remember that technology, while it can help you with time, it can definitely cost you a lot of time if you don't use it well. And so this is where I want to transform your thinking today. I want you to help you to think, what is it that you need from a technology stack, your technology stack, that's not going to just serve you today, but what is going to serve you into the future? That is the key. And a lot of people just go, oh, I'll just get this and I'll just get that. And it's just like anything. And David's going to be talking about planning and the keys to planning a little bit later on. If you don't plan, you are going to end up with strife eventually. And even if you do plan well in the technology space, with the changes, sometimes you need to adjust that plan, but you need to know the basics of what you need. And the challenge that I see, the biggest problem is that a lot of us are not using the right part of our brain. We go out there, we go, oh, geez, I've got this piece of technology, or I've got a problem that I need to solve. And the first thing we do is we go out there on Facebook and we say, hey, I need a problem solved. Can somebody help me solve it? And so all our friends and all these non-experts go out there and tell you what works for them. And, oh, this is cheap and this is free and this is, this works for me. That doesn't mean it works for you. So I would strongly suggest that if you're going to go on to the technology journey and really start to think about it, start to think about the ideas, what's easy to use. That's a really key one. What's going to get a generation of results for you? What is it that you need? What is the technology stack? What are the things that you need to do now and going to need into the future? That's going to save you time, a good return on your investment, and allows you to focus on your core business. You do not need technology that takes you away from your core business to learn it and to use it. So some really core thinking there around what is it that you need from your technology. So that's what we do. We actually help you, in my business, I've got a number of different pieces of technology, and I'm going to be showing you some of that today. But if you can identify what your need is, then you get it designed to what you're going to try and use both now into the future. And then you go through the implementation. Unfortunately, most people go, I've got a pain point, and they grab something and they implement straight away without actually going through a reasonable process of planning. And so if you just take that little bit of time, and I'm going to be offering some people that opportunity a little bit later on to be able to book some time with us, and I'll go through your tech stack with you. I guarantee you, 100% guarantee you that I can save you money and time, every single person on this call, without a doubt. So finding some clarity. I've been talking about CRMs, but you really got to start, if you're going to get your technology stack right, and you've got all these different types of CRMs and different sort of applications, the first thing you really got to do is get your core, get your ecosystem set in place. If you don't have the right one for you, and if you don't pick one for you, you're going to end up with strife as well. So there is the main ones, which is Microsoft and or Google. I use Google myself. I've been using Google since the day it started. And it's been a cloud-based technology piece of software since it started, where Microsoft took a bit of time to actually catch up in that cloud space. And it was always based, everything was held within your own local computers and servers and stuff like that. Now it has caught up now. All right. And it's very, very, very powerful. The difference what I like about Google as opposed to Microsoft Office, Google helps you to be able to integrate very strongly, where Microsoft has a tendency to hold back and also not tell you that they're actually going to update themselves. And so what that can help, what that can cause in technology space is if you get caught with a change, it can mean that things are not going to work for a little while. Where in the Google space, typically technology companies like us will know what's happening in Google. We can adapt to it very quickly. We get up to 12 months notice on some of the changes. So it's a lot easier application to work with. Where you hold your data, so just put a number into the chat. Like, be honest with yourself. How many places do you hold data? All right. Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever it might be. All right, just put a number in the box. I've seen people with up to 9 locations. I've got 4 different places. We've got one, all right, OneDrive and G Drive. Can I just say to you, pick one? Like, it's okay to have your accounts open with all of them, but have one as your place to go to. So if somebody's going to transfer data to you, that's okay. Move it to the drive that you select. So if you're going to use Microsoft, it will be a OneDrive. If you're going to use Google, it's going to be a Google Drive. Use one. That would be probably the best tip I say to you. You realize it takes on average 18 minutes to find a file. And if you've got it across multiple different platforms, it's going to take you longer than that to find a file. So when it comes to productivity, when it comes to trying to integrate things well, having it in one spot makes a huge difference. Your systems. This is the place. This is the builder in me. I like to, you like to build the foundation before you build the concrete floors, before you build the walls, before you build the roof. There is a system to everything. And even in the marketing space, a lot of people say, oh, it's very specialized. Well, it's a system. It's a step-by-step process. And if you actually know what that process looks like, you can then set up your technology to suit that. So we have just developed, we got a very large government grant to build what we call Systems Hub. It's a part of our CRM platform. And it has, as you can see on that sheet there, it's got step-by-step guides. It's got over 200 different systems already pre-built into it. It's the first of its type in the world. And it makes a massive difference. Again, one platform now that's got all your systems, all your communication channels in it, all your different calendar bits and pieces and everything in it. And now it's actually got systems, and we're just about to launch it with project management tools as well. So systems are key. I do a whole course and everything on systems and how to build systems. It's a 5-step process, very simple. Happy to share that out with anybody that's here as well. But I want to go on to measuring the cost. So we're not just talking about a cost on what's going out of your pocket on a monthly subscription. And I've seen we've got Marissa here. She's the queen of the money side of things. Welcome, Marissa. Good to see you, mate. But measuring the cost is such an important part of your business. And it is, it can be, as I said, the technology avalanche has taken over our world. And it catches up on us. Oh, it's $50 here, it's $20 there, it's $10 here. We don't feel it until we start to really closely look at it on a monthly basis or on an annual basis. And it can be very, very costly. So a couple of places that I've worked in, one particular client that I'll just tell you his story was quite an interesting one. He come to me, he was a painter. I coached him through building his business up. He'd gone from being a painter with one apprentice and his brother to now 34 different tradespeople working for him, and he had to get his systems right. And he came to me just recently and he said, Kel, he said, I really want to get a virtual assistant. I want to get somebody to outsource to get some of my work done, but I'm really struggling to afford it. I went straight, I just asked him a very simple question. I said, what technology do you use? He said, oh, I've got a couple. That was his response. I've got a couple. And so this was very much his model of what he had. He was actually spending over $3,000 US a month on multiple applications. And I'm going, mate, like you could reduce that down to 3 or 4, maybe 500 at the outside, and that will give you the cash to be able to get your virtual assistant into your business. And he went, oh, there's no way you could do that. Sure enough, we end up reducing his bill down. He was saving just over $100 a month in monthly payments, and he now had all the technology he needed, working better, a lot easier, and he had someone to operate it for him and do some of his other administration work at the same time. All right. He also saved on his social media planning, et cetera, et cetera. So it can be done if you plan it well. And it's so easy to get it out of control. And the other side is in our mind, we go, gee whiz, I've been using this for so long. I've got so much data in this place. To move is just going to be painful. All right. So that's another holdback that people have. But it's really something that you want to start to think about. So what's the best sort of software to use? There is just like I was talking about at the start, Salesforce was the first one that really built what we call a native application process. In other words, everything was in one spot and they owned it and they developed everything from scratch. Versus a lot of other platforms use what they call API integration. Now you don't need it, that's the sticky tape stuff, right? So they use another application like sticky tape to sticky tape all these different applications together and hope that it works. So native apps, are really where it's at, and that's where most CRMs these days are going. They're not all there yet, but they are going that way for sure. And so, as I said, there's a lot of great CRMs on the market. The ActiveCampaign, Zoho, Keep, Ontraport. These are the ones that are really starting to lead the way as far as developing their own types of platforms, their own extra applications. They're not there yet. You still got to use Zapier to do all of the applications you need in your business, but they're getting close. So I'm not sure if anybody's using those. You can drop those into the chat as well. Anybody using those ones, or what other CRMs we're out there using? I might be able to answer a couple of questions, the pros and cons about all of them a little bit later. But this new area of thinking, this all-in-one, there really are only a couple on the market that what would now be called an all-in-one system. Salesforce is still there, leading the way. HubSpot is another one. You know, both of those guys there, you'll be paying up around about the $2,000 to $2,500 a month for those particular babies to have them fully working for you. Plus, then as you get more users and more contacts in your database, they'll start charging you more. And so I've seen people with a HubSpot account in around about the $7,000 and $8,000 a month. All right. By the time they get, they're 15, 20 people working in their business, all operating it, all collaborating very well. And they're very happy to stay in that spot because the collaboration's there and they've got a lot of data. But what's happened, this new era has also brought along some new thinking. So there is a company called High Level, or Go High Level. All right, it came out with a platform, a based CRM platform that was designed for new people, new agencies, such as myself, to be able to get that platform. It's called a white label platform, to get that platform and then adjust it to what you need or what your target audience needs. And so like Salesforce, who was really the leader of the pack and started to add all these other pieces in, High Level has now got the ability to natively build without all the sticky tape. And it's really a cool tool. And what I've been able to manage myself with that is in the High Level platform as a base platform, I've added 16 additional features to that to create the productivity hub. It started, and we've got a couple of people in here that use this particular platform that love it. It started as CRM hub, but it's now productivity hub because of these extra features. And it really is a absolute game changer. And what it allows you to do now is, instead of you doing all the work, all right, you can now get other people to do the work. So you can do it yourself, you can hire a team, all right, or you get your expert. And that's the current thinking. Now you've actually got, if you can actually get this all-in-one system with pre-built systems and fully trained teams, you can actually get something that's actually going to go quite quickly. So this is what it looks like. This is what the platform. So it starts off, you've got this beautiful dashboard. Knowing your numbers as a business owner is critical. What's your sales like? How many people you got in your pipeline, that you're talking to that are going to be potential clients? What's your conversion rates, et cetera, and knowing where people are up to. So having a dashboard that literally, as soon as it turns on, you can see your numbers as a business owner is critical. You can see also, all the different task management things that's happening amongst your team. You can see individual salespeople. And so this dashboard becomes a very powerful tool for you to open up your day with, to know exactly what's happening in your business from day to day, what your cash flow is going to be like, etc. Down the left-hand side, you'll see there's a huge menu. And for those people who have got a reasonable size screen, you'll actually see that all those types of tools that I was talking about before, your calendars, your payment gateways, all those things are built into this one platform, one login, one sign in, everything there in your one place. It's gone to the stage now where even within this system, a lot of us might use Canva to do our social media, little GIFs and different images. All right, this has now got that built into it. You can do your social media planning. You can do all your posts, design your posts using AI. And so we can actually now do, we do it ourselves. We can do a whole month worth of social media posting from within this platform in about 15 minutes using a bit of AI. We can then go off and adjust it to make sure it's personalized. Don't use AI, just just for the sake of using it. All right. Be intentional about how you use it. It's got all your, when you start to think about how do we find leads and start to do some sourcing of leads, there is the whole bunch of tools in here, including one that will data mine through Google My Business, through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through Instagram, etc., to be able to find the different and generate leads for your business. Now, one of the questions we go, okay, if we get a lead through this, is that going to cause us spamming issues? We've got the systems in place to be able to help you not get caught in that spamming situation. All right. So again, having a tool to get your lead and having a tool that can actually make sure you don't get into any trouble, all right, from a spamming situation is key. This platform has all of that for you. Your calendar management. This Calendly, I've seen a couple of people drop in there that got Calendly. Great product. Fantastic product. Differences with Calendly is you got some different types of things that most people want to do. And Calendly will work if you're a professional, consultant type person. There's actually now 6 different types of calendars you can have. So if you're a person that's wanting to book meetings that are free, or, like David had before, book a free meeting with him, consultation with him, a simple calendar would be a great job. Right. But if you wanted to actually now charge for that consultation, you can put a cost in there so that people are going to pay for it on the way in. If you wanted to have, for instance, a hairdressing salon or a beauty salon where you got multiple people available, all right, and each person has a different style of service that they offer. Now, that could be even in an accounting firm, or could be in a solicitor's firm. Doesn't matter what you're in, you can actually say, well, this person can do these services. All right. And so when a person goes to the calendar and books the type of service required, it will show availability of the person that's got that skill, all right, or that knowledge, and you can actually do that as well. So there's multiple different ways. You can book it in classrooms. If you're doing something like we're on here today and you want to limit the number of people that come into that particular event, you can book the event, whether it be free or paid, and you can book the event so that it maximizes the number of people you can get into your event. Very, very powerful calendar indeed. Social media planning, as I said before, a very, very cool tool with that is, so you can actually schedule out up to 99 years ahead of yourself. I don't know if anybody's wanting to do that. I think anybody thinking longer than probably 30 or 90 days is doing pretty well, but it's got the ability to show you a full calendar and do one post and post it across multiple social media channels, and schedule them whenever you want them to do. And that includes, as I said, that's got Facebook in there, Instagram, TikTok. It's got LinkedIn, quite a few others. And it really does mean that you can post not just to the timeline, you can post a story and reel as well. And you can post photo and video. It's, as I said, it just keeps on going on of what it's about. When it comes to automations, it's got all your automation recipes in there. So if you're wanting to do something nice and simple, like, make an appointment and make sure you get all your different emails and text messages or WhatsApps or whatever it might want to be able to communicate with your people, you can actually have a recipe in there to be able to do your automations as well. These are all pre-built into the basic platform. And that's what a workflow looks like. So when you start to think about, the idea of what can and can't you do in a workflow, I'm yet to try and imagine something that I need to do or want to do that this platform won't do. So it goes currently across 9 different types of communication platforms. So it's got Slack built into it. As I said, WhatsApp, your SMS and email is fairly standard. All your different other social medias, Instagram, Messenger, etc. as well. And so there's a fairly simple choice with a lot of people. You can keep on doing it yourself, or you can plug into something that's going to do it and make sure that you've got all your learning right. And so as we've gone out of 2023, we're in 2024. A lot of people are still back in the 2018s and 19s with their technology, and they're in the same spot. In actual fact, they've probably gone backwards. If you haven't actually updated your technology and really looked at it closely, you might be finding yourself a little bit stuck when it comes up. When we get into Web 3.0, which is coming soon, some technologies is just not going to work, full stop. All right. It's, if you follow that pathway, if you understand what's going on in the technology world, Web 3.0 is going to put a big stopper in a lot of technology working, and also the way in which it talks to other pieces of technology. So make sure you are doing your homework very, very well in that space. And so there you got a nice little QR code. Book a time with me. I'll give you a 30-minute free assessment of what you're doing as far as your systems are concerned, all the different technologies you've done. I've also got it, so if you're looking to wanting or thinking about changing over and you've been on this call today, I'm doing an 8 hours free session that if you actually do sign up with our Productivity Hub application, I'll give you a couple of free sessions on your one-to-ones to onboard it, to get it done for you, set up your calendars, 8 hours free to be able to basically, if you've got on another platform you want to move across, happy to do that. Also put you into our different membership groups. There is a membership platform inside of Productivity Hub. It is a cool little thing. And thanks, Aria, for putting that link in there. And also, I mentioned right at the start about building systems in the Unleash series of productivity tools and courses. We've got an online course platform within Productivity Hub. If you're doing online courses and you're using something like Kajabi or something like that now, it's got all that in there. And one of the other things you'll get with inside of the Productivity Hub is my full systems training course on how to build highly effective systems that will save you hours and hours every week and thousands of dollars every month. So, mate, David, I have done that fast-tracked. I've probably got too much espresso in me after getting up early this morning, but I'm open to some questions. Anybody else got them?
Well, look, I'll be a personal testimonial. We went to High Level probably about 6 months ago because we had exactly what you showed. And the thing you didn't talk about is telephone.
Yes.
So High Level, for me, integrates telephone as well, which means we can call from anywhere on the computer, and it sort of keeps a log of all those calls. So this idea of going to one platform, I think you planted that seed with me probably a year and a half ago, and I think we had probably about 12 at that time. And I've literally just shaved costs, right? Because every time we remove a platform, it's another $50 US a month or $100 US a month, and we've cut it down. So to me, this idea of going to one system is absolutely paramount. You've talked about systemization in business, and systems should be simple, right? I used to have a definition of a system. It has to be easier to use than not to use.
Yes.
And so if you implement a system that your team aren't using, chances are it's more difficult to use than not to use. And so you need to look at that usability, which is pretty much what you touched on. So for those who haven't done this, Kel's been doing this for long enough that he's like the grandfather of the industry. So I don't think there's a CRM or a technology that he hasn't spoken to or about. Worth picking his brain around what's the best approach for this moving forward. But to me, you talked about the tech stack, and I think it's a non-negotiable of being in business these days. It integrates things, and you didn't even talk about website, right? So not only does it do funnels, it does websites, it does booking links, it does telephone calls, it does connections with Facebook leads. It's got it all there. And the best thing for me is I log into one thing and I got a dashboard and I can see what's going on. So for those who are not sure, like CRM's a no-brainer to me. The question is which platform, and there's so many options these days. We can get lost in rabbit holes. So I think it's just a matter of understanding what the need is and making sure that you solve the problems that you have, not just now but into the future. So you've got scale.
200%. And I think what's important, as you said, Dave, like I could sit here for quite a few hours. It's hugely important to understand that this particular platform will pretty much do anything you need in business. Okay. And what is more important, the technology is great, but if you do not have the support side of things, that's where you can actually fail. So you can get some great technology, but if you're not got somebody who can help you do it, there is a challenge. So You call me the grandfather of this technology space. Thank you for that pearl of wisdom. But the reality is, being in this space, that's the one thing that I know after being in this space for decades that people need. And so, particularly when they're moving from one platform to another and they're trying to work this stuff out, we actually offer a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days live chat service. Our response time's averaging somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes. Most platforms, you might get an answer back 24 to 48 hours later if you're lucky. But the other part to this is they're my own team. Like I have a huge team that actually man the desk and do the support services ourselves. It's in-house, where a lot of other services do outsource that. And when it comes to the consultation process, they outsource the consultation process. We do it all in-house. All right. So it's the people who are using the system day in, day out are the people you'll be talking to get your support from. So I've got a person saying that the schedule is not working. What I'll also do is I'll drop in my email address here, and you can actually just drop me an email and come back to us.
Yeah, fantastic. So really just to wrap that up, for those who are thinking CRM, had a CRM that's still 3 years old, this is your opportunity to have someone review it. There's a question from Jack. Let's see if we can keep this pretty short, Jack. What do you got?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kel, for explaining all of that, because I work a lot in tech myself, being a videographer or a solo business operator, I suppose. Just very, very briefly, I guess it's a bit hard to cover quickly, but what are your general sort of predictions for where that 3.0 space will be going?
Okay. 3.0, what the bottom line is, it's about security. Okay. So the security aspect of how you hold your data, how you collect your data, and how you present yourself online is the key. And so it's using blockchain technology, not that, forget about the crypto coin sort of space, the Bitcoin stuff. Blockchain technology is basically an encryption style of methodology. So if one of the questions you need to ask anybody in technology, are you 3.0 compliant? Really simple question. If they say yes, ask them to show you. All right. A lot of people are saying yes. Okay. Because they know that they're going to be by the time it hits, but they're not ready yet. All right. So this platform that I'm talking about was ready from day one. It was built that way. All right.
Awesome. Good answer. Yeah. So Cal's put his email address in there. If you can't book for whatever reason, ask him questions. He knows all the answers. He's been doing this for long enough. It's a thing that's not going away. This whole idea of tech stack is non-negotiable. The better you have your tech stack, the more systemized your business is, which allows for scale. It's booking out too fast. That's why.
That's probably, my calendar does book out, but you got the email there.
Yeah.
Right? If you drop it in there, I will make sure that we create a message for you and have a good conversation.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Kel. Let's give Kel a nice thank you for doing a great presentation. I love the way that you sort of tell the story. It's super interesting. We've talked about a lot of ways to find cash. And what I'd like to do now is literally show you the planning mechanism that we've been working on for the past 21 years. Actually, more than that, 23 years, I should say. And we've developed it. And not only that, we've made it accessible to everybody. So let me see if I can make all this work. There's my snazzy screen. We called it the roadmap. And we called it the roadmap for a reason, because I think when people go into business, they go in with all the right ideas. They get excited. They go, I'm going to run a business. I'm going to become super successful, or I'm going to have a lifestyle business, or I'm going to save the world. And they have all these great ambitions. But what normally happens is they get hijacked, and they get hijacked by busyness. And we know a few people are sort of involved with this idea, and they just get bogged down in the day-to-day operation. So the problem really is that, you know, people who run businesses become chaotic over a period of time. Can I just get a show of hands for those people who experience chaos in their business? Yeah, we all do, right? And chaos is neither good nor bad, but what happens is it causes overwhelm and it causes burnout. The second thing that we see a lot of is this cashless business where there's never enough money at the end of the month, right? Or as I think it was Brian Tracy who said it, too much month at the end of the money. right? And the idea was simple, is if you're running a business, it's not just about turnover, it's about leftover, and leftover is profit. The third problem we see a lot of is this one, which is, complaining about finding good people. Right now in our environment, in our society, in our economy, unemployment is an all-time low for the past 20 years, which means if you're recruiting right now, you're going to have less people apply than ever before. So finding good people used to be hard. Now it's even harder. And the last piece of this puzzle is just getting stuck on this treadmill. And we all know what the treadmill looks like. The treadmill basically means I go to work every day. I have an inbox full. I just churn through the activities and I make it to the end of the day just to wake up and do it again tomorrow. And we don't know how we're going to change things. We don't know how we're going to get better. And the biggest concern I have around this is that people lose their energy and their motivation. Their business just becomes a thing they have to do every day rather than something they were inspired to do when they first started. So the opportunity is simple, right? Turn the chaos into control. And we're going to talk a bit about how you do that today. And what I mean by that is get control of what's going on in the business right now, because simple visibility, just simple things like what Kel showed us with that dashboard, letting you log in every morning and saying, how's my business going? What's my snapshot? Traffic lighting, what's going on in each department means I've got control back. And we're going to talk about how to do that. The second thing is this distinction between profit and wages. Now, for those people who are self-employed, it's time for money. That's what self-employment is all about. And if you've been in any corporate or any employment for any period of time, that's what we've been trained to do, right? And really, when you think about it, a business owner's job is to become profitable. So we need to think about profit as being as income, our income, and not just the wages, not just the time for money conundrum. And the last piece of this is like building not only a team, but a self-managed team. Because I think if we don't get the right people on the bus, what ends up happening within our business is we just have more chaos. And I've seen it happen where too many people employ and all of a sudden they're working harder than anyone that's employed by them and they're making less money. Has anyone experienced that one? You build a team and you make less money. How does that work? Well, how that works is because you didn't build a self-managed team. You just got more people taking money out of the bank account and you have to then tell them what to do. So we're going to talk a bit about how to solve that problem. But the ultimate aim of running a business is financial security. Financial security. And the idea is that we choose our lifestyle, right? Because everyone has a different view of how they want their business to run. Some want to conquer the world. Others just want it to not stress them out and give them a means of living. Your financial security is determined by what is important to you. So let's talk firstly about getting out of chaos and moving into control. And I'm just going to spend a few minutes on this one because there's three elements that I want to talk about. Now, the very first element of getting out of chaos and getting into control is knowing what you're building. Now, I want to ask you a question. This is one I picked up. There's a guy by the name of Michael Gerber. A lot of people have been around the traps for a while, know who he is. He wrote the book, The E-Myth. And then he had to rewrite it to The E-Myth Revisited, which is a very strange title, but that's the one you want to get, right? And he talks about building a business system. And he asked a question in one of his seminars that I was at. And the question was, what will your business look like when it's finished? What will your business look like when it's finished? Now, I saw a couple of grins. Most people don't know, right? Because when you say finished, they go, what do you mean finished? I just started, or I've got years in me. And they're not thinking about the end game. They're thinking about tomorrow. Now, the question, what will my business look like when it's finished? If you don't answer that question, you'll be probably in the 80% of businesses that are small, that when it's finished is when you can't work anymore. And it usually ends up in just closing the doors. We think we can sell the business, but the reality is it's not worth anything. And the reason it's not worth anything is because it's a job. So the very first element of going from chaos to control is that you need to know where you're going. So you need to aspire, or you need to create some level of vision. Okay, now that aspiration should be in writing, and it should be something that takes you to the end. What will my business look like when it's finished? Or worst case scenario, what it should be is where will my business be in 5 years' time? Now, we call this the 5-year vision within our structure of working with business owners, because I suggest to people, if you can't tell me what you're building, how can you possibly build it? Imagine going to a builder and saying, build me a house. And the guy says, yeah, no problems. How many bedrooms do you want? And you go, I don't know yet, just start. Right? That sounds like the most ridiculous thing on the planet, but that's what 90% of business owners are doing. What are we building in your business? I don't know, just get me a few more clients. I just need to find one good person. I just this, I just that. And they're not really thinking about end game. So if you do not have a clear picture of what you're building, there is no possible way that a builder can start. It's illegal. But in business, you can start a business without having any idea of what you're building whatsoever. So the very first thing is you need to know what you're building. The second thing that you need is you need to plan. Now, when I say plan, I mean the verb plan, not the noun plan. So planning is not something you do once, because for most people, they do have some form of business plan, and it's usually done when they startup plan, or it's done when the bank says, you need to send us a plan so we can loan you the money. But they don't write their own plans, and if they do it once a year at best. My suggestion is planning is dynamic. It should be done every single month that you're in business to review what's happening, what's working, what's not working, and rejigging the plan. The last part of getting from chaos to control is that you need to track. Now, the beauty of track, when I say track, is it's about KPIs. Now, we're not talking about just profit and revenue, because 99% of people I talk to can tell me what their revenue was last financial year, and the only reason they know is because they had to do a tax return. Then I ask them what was their revenue last month. They can usually tell me that as well. I ask them what their profitability was last month, and most people are scratching their head. I don't really know. I'd have to get the bookkeeper to do some work for me to get profitability numbers for me. So tracking to me means understanding not only the revenue, the dollars, the profitability, the leftover, but also the activity, which is the leading indicators within your business. Now, if we have tracking in place, and you saw what Kel talked about with his dashboard, I can see what's going on in my business from an activity point of view. Then I have a plan that's dynamic, which means when something changes in the market, I adapt to that plan because I'm looking at it every month. And I'm very clear on what I'm building, so what my business will look like when it's finished. I promise you, you will move from chaos and you will move into control. Doesn't mean you're making money yet. It just means that you know what's going on and you know what levers to pull to actually take the business to the next stage. Now, I call this level 1 of building a business, getting out of chaos and moving into control. And I often ask people to do this first. Tell me what you're building. And if you can't articulate it well, how do you expect your team members or your suppliers to know how they can help you? And then the second part is that we move into cash flow. So level 2 is cash flow. Cash flow is literally about bringing money in the door. Now, we've touched on it today. We've found great ways to find money that exists that you don't have access to. Even Kel showed us how we can save money on the operational expenses of running our business. Cash flow is king in business, and there's 3 elements that will get you cash flow in your business. The first one, and I'm going to draw now, because you have to guess what this is. It's meant to be a magnet. It's not very good, but we need to attract. What I mean by that is we need to find new clients. Now, for those of you who think I don't need to market because most of my work comes from word of mouth or referral, I'm going to suggest you have a scale issue, right? Because if you're not marketing to get new business, what you're relying on is word of mouth or referral. Now, that's great because that's the best form of business, but it also doesn't allow you to turn the volume up or down in your business according to your capacity. Doing marketing will do 2 things for you. It will generate new leads, but it'll also allow you to charge more for your service. Just want you to hear that again. If you market, you can charge more for your service because you're putting yourself in front of people proactively and you're not getting people just coming to you because of the work that you've done in the past. The second thing we need to do is we need to be able to take all of these leads and we need to put them into a process so we can convert. Now, conversion is sales. Sales requires people to talk to people because people don't buy from companies, people buy from people. And in your business, if you don't have a conversion mechanism, which is either a salesperson or a process, you're going to get lots of leads that inundate you with activity, but you're not getting the money out of that activity. So you're not seeing a return on your activity investment. And the last piece is that you actually need to deliver your service. Now, the reason you need to deliver your service is because that's where the money is, right? You cannot bill a client if you don't deliver the service. And if your team are not delivering service, or if you're in overwhelm within your business, the cash flow will stop. And I've watched people who are so busy that they can't even speak to me, telling me how busy they are, but they've got no money in the bank. Now, I'm going to make a suggestion. If you're so busy that you can't talk to me and you have no money in your bank, there's something wrong with your business strategy. Okay, because busyness does not equal profit. Busyness just equals busyness. And so you need to connect the dots. So cash flow is about making sure you're doing the right things. So we need to attract, we need to convert, and we need to deliver. And by no means is this the end, because all we've talked about is getting out of chaos, and we've talked about building cash flow. What I will tell you is that if you start building cash flow within your business, you're going to have a new problem, right? And the new problem is you're going to run out of bandwidth. Now, if you don't have a system in place, if you don't have a strategy in place to build beyond yourself, this will become your capacity, and you will not want to market your business beyond this, because what ends up happening is you say, I can't take on any more clients because my quality of service will drop, and then I won't be able to deliver and I won't be able to collect the cash. So I don't want to market my business. Now let's think about this. When we say begin with an end in mind, when we say, what will my business look like when it's finished? I'm going to suggest that part of that answer has to be that I'm not on the tools anymore. Now, even if you're great at what you do and you're an artist, I will promise you one thing that's almost a guarantee is that everyone who works within your business will leave. All your employees will leave, and you will leave, and your customers will leave at some point in the future. In Japan, when they do business planning, they plan for 100 years, 100-year business plans, which is a scary number. Why would you plan for 100 years? Kel even said you can plan your social media for 99 years, right? And one person put their hand up, right? But here's the reality. The reason they plan for 100 years in Japan for business is they say we should build a business that lasts intergenerationally. So it's about contributing value to a market rather than the person making money. So when we move on beyond cash flow, we need to start looking at the next piece of the puzzle, which is growth. So I don't consider growth getting another client. I don't consider growth getting to capacity as a person. I consider growth expanding beyond yourself in your business and starting to build a team or a structure that allows your company to scale. Which brings me to one of the best kept secrets in being successful in business. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this one because it's so critical. The best kept secret for being successful in business is finding and keeping good people. Finding and keeping good people. Don't let people kid you and say it's a product. Don't let people kid you and say it's the market. Your business will grow to your capacity. And unless you build a team of people that are better than you at certain skill sets, you are destined to be doing the work forever. So how do we find and keep good people? Well, the very first piece of this is that you need to be able to recruit. You need to be able to recruit. So you need to find them, right? And recruiting is just like marketing for new customers. It's a campaign, which means you need to attract the right kind of people. You need to tell that they're actually going to do their job, and then you need to hang on to them. So step number one is to recruit. Step number two is that you need to be able to delegate. And the art of delegation is not abdication. It's about teaching people how to do a function within your organization in an effective way and monitoring it through some level of KPIs. And then if I get the right people on board, then I need to keep them, retain. Now, here's the funny thing. When I talk to people about employment in their business, they go, oh, we advertised on Seek and we didn't get any good results. Or we got a couple of candidates and we picked the best of a bad bunch. Has anyone ever been guilty of picking the best of a bad bunch? Let me ask you how that turned out, right? Because investing in employment is probably one of the biggest investments a business owner will ever make. If you think about it, if I recruit someone today, the average wage is around $70,000, and I expect them to stay somewhere between 5 and ideally 10 years, because the first year is all training and getting up to speed, and then they become productive. So let's say it's 5 years at $70,000. What we're talking about is a lot of money, right? We're talking about $350,000 that we're about to invest into this employee. But more importantly is, what do we expect when we invest money with employees? We expect to see a return on that investment. Now, if I was asking you to invest $350,000 into a startup business or into a house or a property, you would do some due diligence. But when it comes to employment, we think, oh, we'll just get an agency to help us, or we'll just put an ad on Seek and see who shows up. My suggestion, you need to learn and become really, really good at finding and keeping good people. That will grow your business without you having to work any harder. But if you don't have a strategy for recruiting, for delegating, and for retaining those people, you will end up in a situation where you say, can't find good people. Oh, you know, what happens if I train them and they leave? You know, what's the opposite? What happens if I don't train them and they stay? And there's so much discussion around finding and keeping good people, but very few people put a system in place for this. So we've talked a little bit about getting out of chaos. We've talked about bringing some cash in the door. And now we're talking about the engine room of your business, which is where the growth will occur. And if I'd suggest one thing to business owners, you need to become really good at spotting talent. spotting the talent, getting these people to want to join you is one of the key elements to success in growth. Now, I asked a question at the start and I said, what will my business look like when it's finished? And I'm going to suggest for most people, we don't consider building a business that works without us, okay? And the problem with that is that if you do not start planning your exit, and I'm not talking about retirement, I'm talking about exit from the tools from the coalface of your business, you'll get locked in because everyone will want to deal with you, right? You're the best in the industry, you're the best person, everyone wants to deal with you. I want Kel to install my CRM for me because he's the best. And Kel's going, I don't do installations anymore. I have a team, right? Right? And so should most people, right? So the idea that you need to think about is if I want to leverage, I need to become really good at becoming a leader. I need to lead. And leading is about setting direction, predicting the future, and giving people the encouragement they need to be inspired to do their job better. To build a self-managed team doesn't mean to find the right people. To build a self-managed team means giving people permission to take control of something that is dear to them. We do this through leadership and through inspiring our team members. And if we do this well, we're going to be able to, and I don't like using this term because most people think this is retirement. Exit to me means getting your hands off the controls of the business and letting someone else drive it for you. Now, it's a long-term game. It's not a short-term game. And I've gone through a lot of elements today. But what I want to do is, the good news is that it all exists already online. Everything I just showed you is part of a training program that we've put up on the webpage. And I'm testing this. And the reason I'm testing this is that I think anyone who's got the guts to run their own business is taking a huge risk. And without the proper guidance, you are destined to burn out. And the proper guidance isn't about doing your job better, being the technical expert in your space. The requirement is that you understand that a business building structure, a structure to build a business that's sustainable, requires a platform. So this diagram that I'm showing you, this triangle, is literally everything we just talked about summarized. So you'll notice that the first level is the aspire, the plan, and the tracking level. This is taking control back. The second level is get some cash in the door, which is attract, convert, and deliver. The third level is the engine room, which is building my team. And we need to get onto that at some point in time, recruit, delegate, and retain. And then the last level is how do I get myself out so I can spend more time working on than in my business? So if you click on this QR code, or I might get, there you go, Ryan's dropped it into the chat box. This is a pre-training at the moment because I'm doing an experiment, right? I want to see if people actually get value from doing this in their own time, right? We're not selling this program, we're giving it away. Because I think this fundamental building structure, first of all, I know it works because I've been doing it for 23 years, but I think every person in business needs to be aware of this. So if you're willing to get online and jump on and do the training, there's a few videos on there where I explain each one of these elements. There's even some tools that are available to you for the do-it-yourself kind of guys, right? So anyone out there who's thinking, I can do this myself, yes, you can. You can go to your research, you can Google this stuff, or you can go to this webpage and it's all just laid out for you. I've added some tools in there because what I want you to do is I want you to learn where the gaps are in your current business strategy. Because somewhere in these 4 levels, you can traffic light yourself. And you might say, look, I'm just in chaos. And when I'm in chaos, I can't think about what the future is. I'm not thinking about recruitment. I'm not making enough money. Pick an area that is a red light to you. So if it's chaos to control where you need to start, go there. If you feel like I've got a bit of control, I just need more cash, go there. Right? Learn how to build a cash generating machine. If it's about team, you need to start to discover how to find good people because it's getting tougher, right? It doesn't mean it's impossible, it just means it takes more time. Okay. So please, if you've got that time to jump online, this will give you a lot of information, a lot of insight on how you can build your business more successfully. Now, if you get stuck on any of this, you can book a time with one of our team. Our job is to orient you. Our job is to make sure that you see movement, right? I used to say to people, let us work with you and let us prove to you that we can grow your business. I'm done with that. I'd rather that you just start doing the stuff that we believe you should be doing. And if you see shifts, then what we do works. So to me, the planning is about taking time to assess where you're at, working out what is the one element that I need to work on next. When we do planning with our clients, we actually run planning sessions every 2 months and we say, great, what's the right next thing for you to be working on? And it's usually going to be one thing that I can do in a 2-month window, not more than one. I don't want you to have a plan with 100 things on it. You have a GPS in your car, everyone's got one of these things, and it's probably the best tool ever that we take for granted, right? Because the GPS is super powerful, and what it does is 2 things. First of all, if you don't put the destination in, it doesn't tell you anything except for where you are. So that's why we need to aspire. We need to have a 5-year vision, because if I plug in a destination in my GPS, it goes to work. And it starts working out whether I turn left or right at the end of the street. So our planning methodology is simple. Paint a picture of where you're going, plug it into the GPS, and let the GPS tell you what to do next. Because all I need to know is, do I turn left or do I turn right? And if I make a mistake, it says, oh, David, you're a bit silly. I'm going to have to reroute, which is fine, right? Because that's what planning is. Planning is about rerouting and saying, what's the best way to get to my destination? But I can't reroute if I don't have that destination in play. So jumping onto this, we call it the Outcomes Business Roadmap. It's going to be up for a short period of time just to test it. So I want people to jump on and use it. If it's something that gives you value, please let us know. That'd be awesome. If you get some growth out of it, even better. If you want some help, if you get stuck with this and you're a bit confused as to what to do next, there's ways that you can book time with our team. Has this been useful, by the way? I'm just checking in with everyone. Thumbs up if it's been useful. Awesome, awesome. Into the chat box, what's been most valuable out of this this discussion around business building? What is the area that resonates with you most? I just want to hear from some feedback from the team. What's been most valuable to you? What's resonated with you? What floats your boat? What's made you excited out of today's session? All of it makes sense. Great. I'm looking for a few more, and then I want to talk about the future. And it's not back to the future. It's even more interesting than that. Systems, the roadmap, just understanding everything at a basic level. And it really is, it's not as complicated as everyone makes it. Building a business is pretty simple, right? You just need to know what to do next. Having a framework that's clear, having a business versus being self-employed, big point. Reiterating what we have been building on, it does work, just keep going. Yeah. The power of systems and the consolidating of simplicity. Back to basics after consuming too much knowledge. This is the real world issue that we have right now. We're being over communicated. Everyone's telling you 100 different things to do and everyone's got a better idea than the other guy. My suggestion is the way to build a business hasn't changed, right? In 100 years, that hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is the channels, the format, the technology, right? Our job now is to be more curative as possible. So how do I push out all the noise and how do I take the things that are valuable to me? So I'm going to just talk about one last thing before we wrap up for today, and we'll be done in about 5 minutes. Everyone good with that? 5 more minutes? Awesome. So I want to talk about the future. Now, I want you to imagine this, right? We look forward 12 months and we say, here's a box in the future, and let's call it 2025 for want of a better term, which is 1 year away. And in that future box, there's a couple of different things that could happen, right? So the first one is that we could have the ideal outcome. So things work exactly as planned and we have an ideal outcome. The second thing that could happen is it's not ideal, it's just okay. The third thing that could happen is that we get a substandard result, so things are poor. And the fourth thing that could happen is absolute disaster. What I'd like you to do is, if you've got a pen and paper, I want you to identify or define what would ideal be for you. In 12 months' time, what would ideal be for you? Now, it could be revenue, it could be profitability, it could be market share. What is the thing that you could measure that would make the next 1 year ideal for you? My suggestion would be revenue or profit. What does it need to be for an ideal year? I want you to then, on the next box, what would be okay for you? So not ideal. So let's say if ideal for you was $1 million with 30% profit, 300K profit, that would be ideal. What would okay be? And okay might be just a little less revenue, or it might be half. So what's the okay number? So if we had 1 million up here, we might have 500K here. Then I want you to go to poor and say, well, what would be a poor result for the next 12 months? What would the poor result look like in terms of revenue or profitability? Just throw a number in there. And that might be 200K. Just guessing. What would the number be for you? And what would be disaster? Now, for some people, disaster would be not okay. It would be 0K. We're talking about dollars here. Could be that we make no money. So I want you to think about what those 4 options could be, right? That's your future in 12 months' time. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to come back to today, which is now. And we're going to have a little bit of a realization. Now, the first realization that I want you to have is that performance is not a straight line. And what I mean by that is if we look at now and we look at our future, we might end up going up to the ideal, or we may end up going to okay, or we may end up going to poor, or we may end up going to disaster. And because these are not straight lines, we might start with everything looking the same-ish, okay? But it's really over time, what we start to see is that things will change, okay? So what I want you to do is once you've identified these, you're going to be somewhere on either lines 1, 2, 3, or 4 in terms of your trajectory for the next 12 months. So I'm just into the chat box. I'm curious, who thinks they're on line 1? So they're moving towards the ideal over the next 12 months. Just put in number 1. If you think you're going towards okay, put in number 2. If you think things aren't going as planned and they're slipping a bit backwards, number 3. And if you're heading for disaster, you could put number 4 in. I've got number 1s, I've got number 2s, I've got number 3s. Number 2s. Okay, so a lot of people are putting themselves around number 2. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about this, right? Getting to number 2, from where we are now, we're all starting around that same sort of area. And the thing that's going to change whether we move from number 2 to number 1 is a decision, okay? Because I think when we're optimistic with our planning, we say, you know what, let's go for ideal. And this is one of the things I teach people when I say, let's picture what your ideal business would look like in the future. I say, I want you to take all the constraints away from today. And so when we do 5-year visions, 10-year visions, 25-year visions, one of the prerequisites is let's assume everything goes exactly as planned. Now, the reason I ask people to do that is because if I visualize the future that's dependent on today, what happens is I'm constraining my growth. So this future that I want you to think about is I want you to think about how do I go from line 2 to line 1 for those people who are on 2? How do I go from 3 to 1 if those people are on 3? Okay, because what happens is if we don't do anything, the gap is unrecoverable. So if you end up here, going from here to here is quite a big distance, okay? But when we're down here, it's quite a small distance. So the longer we leave things, the longer we wait for things to change, the harder it is to get back on track. Is everyone following me so far? Okay. So what I want you to think about is that when we help people, when we say to people, look, once we know what your ideal is, our job is not just to get you to ideal. Our job is also to make sure we can try and bring that forward. So we're going to try and accelerate that growth. And it happens more often than not. And the reason that happens is that when you work with someone in building your strategy, there's accountability, there's knowledge, and then there's breakthrough. Now, breakthrough is when we have to deal with self-limiting beliefs. Who here has had an experience of being limited by their own thinking? I'm just curious about this. It's sort of a trick question because I think we all do, right? And what I mean by that is I often realize, and I have my own coach, and the reason I have my own coach is because I can't see, a fish can't see water. So I run my own business and I need someone from outside to say, David, why are you doing it that way? And I go, what do you mean? That's the way I've always done it. Who's ever had that experience? And what we realize is that all it takes is for one person to make a distinction for us and we can change our trajectory, okay? So the reason I show you this is that if you know what your ideal future is, that should be what you're plugging into your GPS. And when you plug that into the GPS, it'll change what you're doing right here, right? So you're acting differently on a day-by-day basis. And when we do this, we will accelerate the growth of our business. So goal setting is not just a throwaway line and it's not just a motherhood statement. It's literally about how do I change what I'm doing right now so I can accelerate my result. So my last question is how long would you like to wait before you decide you're going to go from number 2 to number 1? Because today we've shown you a whole lot of ways that you can improve the performance of your business. We found ways to find cash that you didn't know you had access to. We found ways to consolidate what's going on in your current business tech stack. And what I've just shown you is a roadmap that I know works because I've been using it for 23 years. And I've even given you free access to it. So then we sort of look at it and we say, well, what's really stopping us here? And chances are it is a self-limiting belief. And if you don't know what it is, you'll find it very quickly, because as soon as we put pressure on people, what we start to realize is we start to hear all the reasons why they can't move forward. And if those reasons are valid, that's fine. But if they're not valid, they become the thing that stops you from accelerating growth. So I want to wrap today up, and I'm going to get the speakers back on the screen. But from my perspective, it's really simple. I don't want to try and sell you anything. All I want to do is help you understand where the gaps in your business are right now. Now, we call these 10-minute blueprint calls because I think, time's our most valuable asset, and I don't want to spend an hour with you if I don't think I can help you and if you don't think what we do works. So within 10 minutes, I'll be able to do an assessment with you, and I'll do 4 things, right? The first thing is we'll look at what's currently working and not working in your business. The second thing is we'll look at what the future could look like for you, what's possible. The third thing is we need to uncover what the self-limiting belief or bottleneck is within your business. Because when you know where the bottleneck is and you release that bottleneck, what ends up happening is things start to grow almost automatically. And the last thing is I want to make sure that you walk away from our blueprint session with a 3-step action plan. Now, that action plan could be simple, right? It could be literally just review what you're currently doing. It could be a little bit more sophisticated. It could be about identifying who the next hire is going to be, or what's the next system that I need to implement. But for us, it's super simple. I don't think what we do works for everybody, right? I think I need to find people that understand the value in what we do. And that's why we give away all of the data up front. So if anyone's interested in catching up, you can jump on a call by just the chat. It's in the chat box as well to book a blueprint session with myself. You can jump on the training online and do it at your leisure, right? That training that I've shown you online is the table of contents for our program. So everything that's in there, we do deep dives in our coaching programs as well. But I'm not here to talk about coaching programs. Today was to help you find the acres of diamonds that already exist within your current business. And I'm hoping from the 3 presenters that you've had today and the time that you've invested with us, that there's some sort of action items that you've come out with. They're going to change the trajectory of your business. So I'm going to do 2 things right now. The first thing I'd like to do is ask you to just into the chat box, what's been the most valuable takeaways you've got from today's session? And then I'm talking about all 3 presenters. What's been the most valuable things that you've picked up? And what are you going to do about them? And at the same time, I'm going to get the 3 presenters up on the screen if they're still here, which they are, which is awesome. And if there's any questions that you have directly of the presenters, we now have a little bit of time up our sleeves just to deal with any Q&A. So any questions you may have, or just any takeaways that you picked up from the 3 presenters, now's your chance to get those into the chat box. Let's see what we can hear from the guys.
Really good, David and Ken.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. I want to know what your biggest takeaway was. Thanks. Into the chat box. What was the one thing that you'll walk away with and do differently as a result of today? Let's keep looking at what is there and use experts to make it happen. Yeah. I mean, the beauty of the 3 guys on this call is we're all happy to chat, and there's no cost to basically start a conversation. Every one of us, and one of the prerequisites I have for the people who present with us is you've got to be able to assess whether you can help someone or not. And if you can't, just tell them. And if you can, show them. And from there, they can make a decision. So great session, as mentioned, back to basics. Yeah. Finding the money is absolutely going to action it. Awesome. Actually implementing and trusting those who are experts in their field. Yep. Closing the gaps from okay to successful. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. No, that wasn't Jeff. That was Jonathan. No, that was Alison. so many chat things. I see. Actions already booked calls. Awesome. Jonathan Stack takeaway. I'm actioning introducing Mr. Strygosh to my 25,000 high net worth individuals. Yeah, you're a good man,
Thanks.
Jonathan. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie.
The decision I make today is vital. There's always ways of getting funding that I wasn't aware of. And this is really what got me to get David on the call, because it was unique and it was legit and it was useful and it was actually coming from a place of helping people. That's awesome. Lessons from David: invest in your business. Kel: new ways to look at technology. And from you: spend more time working on the big picture and prioritizing cash flow. Brilliant. And this is going to take me from okay to ideal. Love that.
Good. That's a nice one.
Yeah. Guys, we've gone through a lot today. You've met some people, hopefully, on the screen, and you've met some people in the chat. My hope and my wish for you guys is that you do something with what you learned today that takes you forward. And we'd love to hear about that too. Getting the right team to work with for the long term. Yeah, this is a hidden secret for most people, right? A question for Kel: we have files in OneDrive and Google. How do you consolidate these ones easily?
Oh, but there's a piece of technology called multi-cloud.
Multi-cloud.
and you literally log into both your drives and you go copy and send it across.
Yeah, there you go. See, trying to research that would have taken ages. Yes, there is going to be a recording of today's session. There's so much going on today, and some people have to drop in and out. So recordings will go out. They'll be made available for the next 2 weeks. So if anyone wants to rewatch any part of this, please do. I think really it sounds like we're going to land this plane. It's just on 10:50. So we've managed to sort of get it into a short period of time. For those who reserve the time, you now have time to go work on your business. So what I'm going to suggest you do is you either book all the calls with the 3 presenters today, or if you've still got a bit of time, jump onto the websites. I know that David Strybosch has got a really interesting website that explains the details of the funding. I know even with ours, like that Outcomes Business Roadmap, we've been testing it and we've been evaluating and how to improve it. So anyone who gets on there and learns some stuff, awesome. Guys, I'd like to, first of all, acknowledge the presenters for today. David, because he put a heap of work into this. And as he said, it's his first online presentation. I think he did an awesome job.
Done great.
Yeah. And
Thanks.
Kel, because Kel's got some really sexy technology that puts him on the screen really well. And his story's great. I mean, I think when someone's been in this game for a long enough time, they know what goes on. And really for you guys, because to invest nearly 3 hours with us today, that's amazing effort, especially when we're so busy in our world. But to me, it's not busyness, it's business. And doing this kind of thing is going to make you a better business owner. So I'm hoping that that's the one takeaway that you guys get from today, is that learning is earning with L plates on. And we're doing this here so that we can actually improve the way that you run your business. So thanks to the presenters, thanks to you guys for attending. If anyone has any other questions, you'll be able to reach out through email or just book those chats with these guys. So we might sort of wrap it up there and leave everyone to go and enjoy the rest of their day. And thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, boys.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.
Guys.